Keres was one of the greatest chess player to never become a world champion. He was one of the top for a very, very long time. And there is the story, anecdote, or legend that practically when the Russian slash Soviet arrive in his country, they stop the tanks at his house, so showing that they care about him or what would happen to him. Why? Because he was the one who could have become a world champion instead of Botvinnik. Of course, they say it's not true, but he was kind of strong, okay? So here we have volume 1 of 2 that recounts all his life through his games. And we continue to see with game number 2. Also, game number 2 is a correspondence game played in 1932 because obviously in that time there wasn't the chance to play as many tournaments as today, okay? So this is interesting because it's a correspondence tournament of the Deutsche Schachzeitung. No? So imagine he was able to play a correspondence game thanks to a chess magazine. He was black in this game, and his opponent, Siebold, was white. His opponent opened with e4, and he plays e6. He says, in the earliest years, when I was making my fourth essays in international correspondence chess life, I almost invariably played the French defense against 1e4. Only later was I to specialize in the open systems arising from 1e5. So the open system 1e5. What does this mean? That if you want to learn the open games, or if you want to learn to open on 1e5, you can take this book of Keres, study them, and you will see how to play them. Or you can, of course, nowadays there are online database, check online and see all these games as black with 1e5 and create your own repertoire. d4, d5, knight c3, and knight f6, bishop g5, and bishop b4. In the French defense, my favorite system was the McCutcheon or McCutcheon variation, and I try to use it at every opportunity. Here too, the wish to make the game as violent as possible from the very first moves was dominant. e5, h6, bishop d2, bishop takes c3, and bishop takes c3. During the years 1932-1936, Siebold and I had the same variation in many correspondence games, in which almost without exception the continuation b takes c3 was employed. The test move is regarded as inferior by theory, but apparently my opponent wanted to try something different for once. 94. So what is teaching us this? That also today you can play online correspondence games at 1 day, 3 days, 5 days, 7 days per move, right? So if you want to learn like Keres did, this would be a great way because you can take your time to think the position through. However, this is the problem. When you are a beginner, you don't really know what you're thinking or why, so you just waste time because you don't appreciate the position in a way that you can actually feel productive on the position. So that's, in my opinion, is the problem. But this idea of playing correspondence is good, maybe after a certain level. Queen J4, and guess what? Here, Keres plays this, King F8, but he writes, at the time, in such positions, I always prefer the king move to the alternative G6. White cannot exploit the position of a king by bishop b4. Check. Since after c5, d takes c5, and knight c6, black has an excellent game. Okay, so let's return back. So this was the position, right? Let's see. So I place bishop d3, knight takes c3, b takes c3, and c5. This move c5, for example, is a nice move, right? But why? Because if white takes, he has so many pawns on one side isolated, this become a little unprotected, these are bad. So c5 is a very nice move, right? But just to put pressure, you don't want to exchange it. So how should white continue here? Well, I think here he says that this move, queen f4, was probably the best for white. Keep in mind that unfortunately Keres died in the 1970s, so his theory, for whatever it is kind of outdated in any case. So white played h4, queen a5, and king d2. Knight c6, because now he can take and he cannot take back, right? So what did he play here? Here he played this, knight f3. However, I would like to see one thing. You know why I think this move is more interesting than right away this? And maybe it's the same, honestly. Try to take, because in any case he has to take out that. Yeah. Drag, boom, e vai. So what does he do? This one. This one, tac, and hopla. So, not bad. I think this is good for black. Maybe there is a different way to play for white at this point, so it can avoid to give that pawn that I think is good. So this pawn here is better than this pawn here, right? So just to show you, let's see if I can see it. Let's see. So he played this at this point, and let's see, instead of this, to play this maybe. tack, and tack. So it doesn't lose the central pawn. Why? Because remember that this is a reality, right? So it's kind of interesting and can be messy for black, this position. So nothing. We were just seeing what white could do, right? So let me return back to the position as it was. I personally would like to remake the moves because that would help us, but luckily there is a diagram, so I know what to do. Yeah. So practically black just played this, knight c6, instead of playing this right away. So knight c6 and white plays knight f3. Okay. Okay. So what does continue? The same story. C takes d4. At a certain point you have to take. Knight takes d4. And knight takes e5. Queen g3. Knight takes d3. Now, black could have done this, but it's probably not a good idea. Driver would be this, yeah. No, probably not a good idea because again, look how exposed is the black king. Here for sure white can create a good attack. So I don't know. I wouldn't do it, and in fact also Keres didn't do it. But here it's interesting, like always, I think his opponent was good, because he didn't take right away. No? He played Queen d6 check. So he wanted to enter in enemy territory. This, rook h, e1, and rook c8. So now you see why he's centralizing this rook, because this need at a certain point to defend that probably. So guys, notice that the problem here is this move. Boom. So kind of nice. Yeah, it's kind of sharp here. So if you take this, obviously you have a big problem because white will probably give you that. So what does black? Because if he takes, he goes here with a rook. You have to move the queen again, and then he can play knight f5. Okay, okay. So he said, boom, he played this. That's interesting, yeah. And now you have a big problem, right? Why? Because if you make the mistake to play this, oops, check, and this is gone, right? So that's the beauty behind this move, Queen c5. Yeah. Okay. Obviously, I didn't check everything with the computer, but more or less it's what we see. And I'm sure Keres was quite conscientious as a player. So white plays queen e5 because obviously he doesn't want to exchange queens, he wants to play, right? And black plays this, because it was attack, to remove a king from the center and defend the pawn g7. And then, of course, g4. This move that it seems only Alpha Zero could play, well, it seems also other people nearly 100 years ago could play the same move. So that's the funny part. Okay, here it says the first storm is over and the situation can now be assessed. White undoubtedly has a good attacking chances in return for the pawn sacrifice, but the position has concealed in it a number of interesting and complicated possibilities, since the white king is also not particularly safe. So Keres also says that in the time, obviously, since they were probably young, they were more attacking than defending, right? And that's the idea. But it's interesting that they could probably watch all the possibilities of what he could sacrifice in order to make the position exciting. Okay, how does Keres continue here? Obviously, you cannot attack on that side, right? The center is blocked, so it's not that you have 200 different moves. And this is the move he played. Meanwhile, also white has possibilities, right? And where he has possibilities, obviously the center is kind of blocked, but he has already 2 pawns advanced. He needs to open the position to attack that king, and so he does f4. As you can see, from a strategic point of view, it's kind of clear what you have to play at a certain point. It's not difficult, right? If you think in that way, instead of thinking all the moves that you have to calculate before. Here it says that c4 would have been a more prudent move and gives a line. Obviously, we don't like to see lines that ends up in a draw. We want to see blood, and the blood was spilled in this way. C takes b4, queen takes b4, check, and king e3. So this is also interesting. It could have white could have made a kind of trap here with king e2, right? Because after this move, oops, and you say, ha ha ha, he has lost the rook, right? Yes, he has lost the rook, but let's say, for example, he plays this. Hmm. So if it takes, oops, I was trying to see if there was a way to checkmate, but there isn't. The point here is just this, that if you make the mistake of taking on c1, there is a check, and when you take, no matter what, oops, he loses this. Or here, and this could be kind of interesting, let's see, if you give check, no, he escapes. He escapes. So you gotta get it there. You gotta get his queen. But if you get his queen, let's see, this is more interesting. Takes, hop, tack, and boom. And so I think here black will have an interesting endgame if you want to survive. Obviously, I don't know if black can survive. Obviously, it's an interesting move. So let's go back. I don't know where I was. Yeah, probably here. So let's put the position back as it was. So we see. So after queen, we saw this thing, no, that he made instead of king e3. No, wait, but he was here. It was here. This was here. So instead of king e3, if he played this, boom, and would play this. Okay. So he played this instead, but probably he would have seen it, right? So he would have seen that it wasn't a good idea if you play this to go here and try to gobble this, because you know that. And the king, probably it was here. Yes. So he gave check and white played this. Okay. And here, what would you play if you were black? Okay. What would you play if you are black in this position? So Keres played f6, and here it says it is easy to see that white must not capture either on c8 or e6. Now, however, a position has a reason which offers excellent opportunities for combination and is thus very much to the taste of both players. Queen h5 and e5. He says, from obviously his expert self, he says, nowadays I would have first prepared this thrust with rook e8. So he would have gone here first. But in that time he played that. But at the time I was especially entranced by the fourth continuation of a text move with all its combinative possibilities, and indeed it must be granted that ensuing portion of a game is not lacking in complication. F takes e5, rook e8, and here there is a strong move for white, which is rook f1. Here it says the only counter, but a very strong one. Black must not immediately continue with rook g8, sorry, re g8. No, king g8. Yeah, because white would play this, rook takes f6. And this leads to a mating attack. Wow. Okay. So as to be able to renew the threat of king g8, black must first protect the point f6 once more. Okay, and what does it do? Queen b6, the move that protects that point. Rook b1, queen c7, and knight f3. Queen c5 check. And here it says, since white has now adequately protected the e5 square, black goes over to another plan of attack. With the text move, he forces the advance d3, d4, making use of a circumstance that white cannot well escape with his king to d2. On account of king g8, he already did king g8, or not? No, he didn't. So let's go back, guys, because the king was here, in fact, not there. So let me, this is the problem often when there is not a diagram and you must remember the position, right? So we were in this position. And this was here, and black just played f6. White played this, and then there was e5, f takes e5, and rook e8, rook f1, and here I told not to continue like this. Unfortunately I left the king there because the move was this. So rook b1, queen c7, knight f3, and queen c5, d4, queen c2. So let's see one thing. We are here. He says you cannot escape to this square. Okay? Because now he could play this, he says. Because the knight is here and he cannot play rook takes f6 anymore. That's the reason. Oh, okay. Now makes sense. Okay. Now makes sense. It was in this position, and so he played d4 and queen c2. And here it says, now black threatens to win the queen by g6. Because now he's controlling this, so if he plays g6, yes, it's a problem. Okay, wow. As you can see, just a different square, the pieces are in a different square, the position changes a little, and things completely change. So it's kind of interesting, right? So here there is a beautiful move by white. But obviously threatens a possible checkmate. And is this knight g5. Now the checkmate is on f7, right? If you played h takes g5, queen takes h8, king f7, rook takes f6. Oh wow, nice. And of course such attack would give a kind of draw, right? Why? Because let's say that we do it, okay? Takes. Because in international chess, this is the thing. You can start to give perpetual check. Oops. And now what do you do? If you do this, I'm not sure you can escape. But if you do this, there is this, and then when it goes here, I don't know. I don't know. Because we can go here, right? Mm. Oh, here it says, would white attack good enough for at least a draw? But the problem is this, and that he can go there. Now you need to continue to give check, huh? Not so easy. However, and this is attack from here. But I might have missed something. I think Keres could have given a more detailed variation because clearly it's a very complicated position here. It's a beautiful, as we can see, I honestly am very happy of having bought these two books because these kind of games are very, very exciting with lots of variation to go over. And so it's typical Keres style. It's similar to Morphy, but a little more complicated, in my opinion. So he played knight g5, and the other didn't play that because the king was here again. I continue to leave the king on g8, and as you can see, it's interesting also this little mistake, because if the king is on g8, you cannot play this, right? Cioè, look how funny it is. If this was the position, and he plays this, you cannot do it because, yes, if you take this, is a possibility to give you check or something, checkmate, right? Maybe no. It's not checkmate or even like this. So this is not checkmate either. So the position of the king makes the difference because if he goes here, he can escape. And if you go back, for example, oops, you lose the queen, you cannot continue to give check, so you cannot escape from there. And so the fact that the king here you can play, here you cannot play because you lose. So that's kind of very interesting situation, in my opinion. But just a square different and everything changes. And this is also what people with, when the composers of studies, they do. They see an interesting situation like this and say, but what if the king was here? What would happen? And then maybe they modify the position with another rook somewhere, like here, to show that it would work that knight g5. No? And that's for me, it's kind of the interesting part. But okay, sorry, in reality it was my mistake. The king was there, and that's why this can be played. Okay. However, he says you cannot play h takes g5. What can you play? He says g6. Why g6? Because the queen c2 is controlling and protecting all that thing, right? So now white is obliged to play this. And after this move, it seems, it says white counterplay is now over. Because it doesn't have any more check. See, after rook f7, king g8, what can he do? No? The queen is keeping this, and this is still unprotected. But like I told you, I was sure, because this really seems a beautiful study position where you change the position of the king in one place and everything changes. Watch. The next move is rook b7, like I thought. Very, very exciting in a sense. Very exciting. Wow, this is a kind of long game in which white made a mistake the things change. Otherwise, it could have as well given black some huge problem. Here it says it is interesting to observe that white still has an attacking continuation at his disposal that even now puts the win in doubt. It is true that in the ensuing play white will only have a knight for the queen, but his rooks constitute a remarkably effective force on the 7th rank. So now we see what happens. Takes. And here there is a mistake. Wow. So here there is a very long analysis, guys, that I think it's worth watching. It's a page and a half of analysis because this is the crux of the situation, the problem here, right? The mistake is rook takes d7. It's interesting because this is a correspondence game, so white did have the time to analyze the position. How should white continue here? That's the most important thing. Eventually, guys, you should put the position on your computer or on your board and analyze it. I will show you the analysis because I think this is the reason why Keres showed it to us, because this is the reason why I show it, this position, okay? There are some positions that are critical that every player, Korchnoi, Bronstein, in this case Keres, years later, they would like to know the truth. And they have made their own analysis, but they don't know the truth, so they publish it, hoping that someone will watch it and try to refute them. Now, this doesn't happen anymore because now there are computers, and so we have become lazy in comparison to the 1970s. I don't know when this book was published. Let's see when it was published, because after all, so the fourth American edition was 1996, but the book was from 1964 and 1966. It was Paul Keres and Harry Golombek. No? So these two books, this that I'm watching 1964, this one 1966. So this is the two books. In 1966, obviously the only one that probably could have refuted all of this was Fischer, right? That was interested in refuting such a thing. Maybe other players, I don't know, if they would have cared enough to lose their time. In any case, after rook f7, king g8. So why do I tell you that? Because I know that in the time that was the only way you had to know if your analysis were correct, to piss someone off, and so that someone would waste days or weeks to try to refute you. And now rook f takes d7. Wow, that's interesting. Here it's threatening a mate in 2, obviously, right? Because rook here, and it's over. During the game, I had prepared the following variation: queen g6, and here there is nothing better since in reply to queen checks, the white king moves up and down between e3 and e2. So it says if you give me check, I continue to move between these two. G takes h5, and here you have to move a queen. So where do you move it? Queen f5, and here there is also the analysis that he made on queen takes h5, rook g7, king f8, rook gf7, takes, and here takes, okay, tack, and here. Here it says, though all the same, a win for black here is not certain. It is natural that, in the case of a younger player, his concrete analysis betray far fewer inaccuracy than his positional assessment. This example is a case in point. Whereas in this game I formerly judged quite a number of positions in a manner either open to dispute or even incorrect, the concrete analysis reproduced above is in fact quite good. Only the conclusion is open up to doubt, because after rook takes b7, knight takes b7, and here we enter an endgame, so you need to use your imagination to think where the pieces must go. Because if you just think about calculation, that's a problem. So what is the move here? It's king e7, and here it says black retains excellent winning chances. But the analysis also is itself not wholly accurate. At the time, I had not at all noticed that instead of playing queen takes f5, queen f5, black could also try queen f6. Oh. Apparently this move wins without much difficulty, since both... Okay, and so now let's go back to that position. And let's see what happens, okay? Because it's kind of interesting. Imagine from here he went down there. Okay, now let's see if it was the correct position. As you can see, often this is the problem of reading books overboard, right? On the computer you cannot make mistakes. Overboard you can, it's true, you cannot do anything. So this was position in which white made a mistake. Rook takes here, okay? Instead, let's see, here he had to play rook f7, check, king g8, okay, and rook f takes d7, okay, and we are at move 35, okay, 35, queen g6, and here there is g takes h5, and this is the point where our teacher, mentor and friend Paul Keres says, instead of this move, we could play another move, which is queen f6. Boom. And he says, apparently this move wins without much difficulty, since both. So why? You cannot take, because you have this, right? And so he says, after knight h7, rook takes h7, rook takes h7, and queen f5, as well as, and here shows another move, it says as well as 37, instead of the knight that goes there, let's see, goes here, here, okay, so 37, rook f7, he says, rook takes e5, d takes e5, queen takes e5, and king d3, and h takes g5. Now, here it says, if you play this, rook f e7, he plays queen f5 check, followed by queen f8, because there is a checkmate here, right? And in a clearly won position for black. Okay. But again, nevertheless, white disposes of a most surprising defensive resource, here to wit. It says after 37, rook f7. Oh my god, it's difficult to follow here, guys. Huh? Let's see, because here it doesn't make put a little diagram to go back, and so obviously, let's see what happens. Let's see. It was something like what, this, it was here, right? So let's see, huh? So let me go back to the position of the diagram, because I don't want to make mistakes. In fact, as you can see, you should have put a little diagram, but it's okay. It's okay, it's okay. We want to see this position and learn from it as much as possible, right? So we want to see what's going on. This here, this here, and this was here. Okay, so the mistake is rook takes d7. Instead, the right move was this, right? So let me find it. Rook f7, king g8, and rook f takes d7, at which he plays queen g6 to avoid the checkmate in 2, but then there is g takes h5, Hopla. Queen f5, right? And here we have the other move, 37, that instead of rook g7 check become rook f7. Okay, after rook f7, here there is another great move that black can play, and this rook takes e5, after which there is king d2, and here it says it becomes manifest that black's own rook renders the win difficult. If a rook on e5 is removed, then black wins simply by queen takes d4, followed by, and so the queen must be on f6. The queen must be on f6. It was here. Sorry, it was here instead of f5. Yeah. So when we may play that, okay, let's return back. Yeah, guys, it's not easy, as you can see. So the queen was on f6. He played rook f7 instead of giving a check, and the other guy says, oops, I play this. And if you play this, if this wasn't here, queen takes d4, right? So now if black wants to play on for a win, he has nothing better than queen d8. And after d takes c5, h takes g5, and here it says a detailed analysis of this position would lead us too far, and in any case does not pertain to the annotation already made here, but it is clear that black retains some winning prospects. I don't know, yeah, probably. Okay, because of the queen that controls this. Yeah, okay. In any event, a most interesting variation. Oh yeah, definitely. Look how many mistakes are easy to achieve. Again, let's go back to that position. That so the queen was here, the king was here, this was here, the knight was here, and this was here, right? This was here, this here, this was here, 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 right? So let me check the diagram. As you can see, there are a lot of possibilities for both colors, like always. And this is the funny thing, obviously. The funny part is that all this analysis that I have taken maybe 10 minutes of video, an engine will make it in what? In a few seconds or a fraction of a second. That's the reality, right? So, okay. We are at move 34. White plays this. Instead, the move was this, that would have created a lot of problems and a lot of analysis. So white played this, it's a mistake, and now the game ends up in like 5 moves. Why? Black plays king g8, rook f7, and now there is queen c3. Let's see what happens. Here we place this move. And black plays rook takes e5. Boom. D takes e5. Queen takes e5. And king d3. And now there is this. Making the win for black quite clear, since the white rooks can no longer constitute a mating threat. Yeah, this is the point. Rook f5 and the queen e4, and here his opponent resigned, but it seems Keres, probably in the time, obviously, you know, they were not bound to have one move per postcard. I think, if I remember well, postcards were used. There were specific postcards for correspondence. And guys, I want to tell you one funny thing. In Keres time, 1932, 1935, a postcard with written the notation would certainly be considered a spy message. Because you understand, a notation of chess, the chess notation, can easily be used for communicating other things, right? Because the other people don't. They just see the postcard, they see all these little numbers and letters, and yeah, it's a chess game, but what do you know that the other person has the same chess game, right? So here it says, after king c3, queen c4, king d2, queen b4, king e3, h takes g4, rook takes g5, king f8, rook d8, king e7, rook takes h8, and queen c3, obviously followed by queen takes h8, and here it says, whereupon white realized the hopeless nature of this position and desisted from further play. This game is typical for my style of that period, not precisely blameless from the positional point of view, but in compensation for this extremely complicated and full of interesting moment. Okay, now I would like you guys to read you another thing, because luckily it's not late at night, and here we have first steps. This was the beginning that I couldn't read you, the introduction by Paul Keres also, that I think is important, right? In the introduction to this book, Paul Keres writes, "It is now nearly 30 years since I first entered the international chess arena." So, in fact, on this book, 1966, he says 1936, right? On the occasion when I took part in the Chess Olympiad at Warsaw as a member of the Estonian team. During these years, I have taken part in many different tournaments. Here you can see the other book eventually, okay? And played against hundreds and hundreds of players. Many good, but also many bad. Games have been played, and successes and failures have often followed each other. In these years I have often been able to rejoice over good results, and equally I have had the less pleasant experiences of suffering from poor results. The more than 1000 tournament games that I played in these years best reflect both my chess development and my creative peaks and low points. This collection of games furnishes the best that I have so far been able to achieve over the chessboard. On the basis of these games, an expert could trace the various changes that have taken place in my chess style during the period covered by the book. Whilst the young chess enthusiast may perhaps find useful indication as to how the development of a chess master is perfected, nobody is born a master. The way to mastery leads to the desired goal only after long years of learning, of struggle, of rejoicing and of disappointment. And here I want to read you this once more because I think this by Paul Keres will help you a lot in your journey in chess if you want to become a master level player. He says, nobody is born a master. The way to mastery leads to the desired goal only after long years of learning, of struggle, of rejoicing, and of disappointment. And then he continues, it is indeed not at all that easy to choose the best from such a great profusion of games. In the first place, it depends very much on the individual taste of each chess player, and in the second place, the choice from amongst one's own game suffers to a certain degree from various subjective influences. In my selection, I have been concerned particularly with 2 points: that they should embrace all my chess career up to the present, and here we have John Noon that has made this new American edition that says up to 1962. So these games, these 2 volumes, cover up to 1962. And should include all the games that have found recognition from the wider chess public, that incidentally my earlier games bear no artistic comparison with those of later years, should in my opinion play not a particularly important role. One rather substantial problem did indeed appear: what kind of annotation should be given to the games? Should the commentaries on the earlier games be reproduced unaltered, or should they be re-edited in accordance with contemporary theory? Should the notes be brief summaries, or should they elucidate the course of the game in exhaustive fashion, so that the games collection could also serve at the same time as a manual of instruction? And finally, the question also had to be answered: should only my own games be taken into account, or could not perhaps some drawn and lost games be introduced in the work? After long reflection, I decided upon the following principles. As concerns the games of the earlier period, I have tried to retain the general character of the annotation, but have also exhaustively checked the individual variation and opinions expressed in the course of this annotation, and, when necessary, I have altered them in accordance with present-day ideas. The notes to the various games should be, I decided, as exhaustively done as possible, so as to increase the value of a book as a manual of instruction. And finally, I decided to take only games won by me, although here too other opinions might be fully justified. The games are arranged in their chronological order. As regards the opponents, I have tried to include the widest possible selection, so that in this collection of games practically all the leading chess masters of the world are to be found. A list of opponents and a summary of the opening employed will be found by the reader at the end of this book. Before each year or group of years, a short essay appears describing the tournaments in which I competed during that period in question and which games deserve special attention. The games are illustrated by numerous diagrams so as to facilitate the study of the variations in the notes. With this, I hand my work over to the reader. I hope it will find welcome acceptance not only as reading for tournament players, but also as a manual for the less advanced player. And here it's signed Paul Keres, Tallinn, Estonia. And then he begins with fourth step 1929-35, which probably I will read in the next game that I will show you. Here we also see the list of opponents, and as we can see, there is Fine, but there is no Fisher. Interesting. So let's just out of curiosity, and then of course there is the index of openings. I would be curious to see if he did in the second one. Okay, it seems that there is no Fisher also in the second volume, so it seems probably he was never able to beat Fisher in a good game. I don't know, interesting, kind of interesting. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed this second game of this two volumes dedicated to the games of Keres. And of course, I will try to give you at least another game, because as you can see, the book has let's see how many games there are, 51 games. So when I also will give 5 or 6 games, we still have just to cover 10% of this book. In any case, let me know if you like it. Sorry for possible mistakes. As you can see, the position of the king between g8 and f8 totally change the things, and also Keres did some deep analysis, but unfortunately there was not a diagram, and that didn't help, definitely. Okay, thank you very much for watching. See you next time.